Good afternoon, or as the French Canadians say, Guten Tag. Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it's Wednesday, we have a cocktail video coming at you. Today we are going to continue talking about rye cocktails, and especially today we are going to talk about several cocktail books. So the drink we're talking about today is called the Toronto. The reason I kind of hesitate as I say the name of the drink is this is kind of a weird drink. So it is currently called the Toronto, however it has gone by other names, and it is sort of a drink that has kind of fluctuated a little bit, which is what we're going to talk about. So it first appears in Hugo Enslin's 1917 cocktail book, Recipes for Mixed Drinks. In that book it's actually called the King Cole cocktail, and it's a little bit different in there. It is basically just a whiskey cocktail. In that case, it is actually calling for bourbon. A bourbon cocktail with a few other little things. Then we go to cocktails and how to mix them. This is 1922. This is going to be one of the versions we're going to make, and this is called the Fernet cocktail. So this is more a sort of half and half Fernet and rye whiskey cocktail. Now in here, he actually, and you'll see this in a lot of the old cocktail books, he just says brandy, rye whiskey, brandy or cognac brandy or rye whiskey to taste, which isn't super helpful. So that's one of the versions we're going to look at. Then Harry Craddock, who we're very, very familiar with, kind of cribbed the name of it. He has a Fernet cocktail in here, but it is unrecognizable as what we're looking at. Then the two new versions I have is Brad Thomas Parsons in Amaro and Mien's Bartender's Manual. They both have a version of this cocktail that is called the Toronto, and that is sort of the modern version of this cocktail that we're going to make. So this cocktail goes back to at least 1917, which means it's a little over 100 years old, or as I would say for most classic cocktails, about middle-aged. So we're going to make an old version of the cocktail, we're going to make a new version of the cocktail. Now, as this is the Toronto, one might be tempted to use Canadian rye whiskey. I've kind of said we're going to be using Rittenhouse for our rye cocktails this month, and so I'm going to stick to that, and I think that's going to work fine. But now that we know a little bit about the twisted history of this cocktail, let's begin making it. Okay, we're back and we have our ingredients. The nice thing is the ingredients list is not different in these two cocktails. It's just the amounts are different, and I think they're going to result in a fairly different tasting cocktail. All right, so on my left, we are going to do what I'm kind of considering the modern version of the cocktail, and on the right, the more traditional version. So, starting off, we are going to add 1/4 ounce of our Demerara syrup, which famously, especially when it's been in the fridge, pours a little slowly. We'll probably just fast forward until it starts pouring. So there we have our 1/4 ounce Demerara. Now on our original, it just calls for a dash of simple. I'm going to use Demerara to keep the ingredients the same. We're just going to kind of eyeball in maybe just like a heavy bar spoon. Next up, we're going to toss in our Angostura bitters. Our modern version calls for 2 dashes. And our original version calls for only 1 dash. Our most controversial ingredient, because I know some people have very strong feelings about this particular spirit, is Fernet Branca. In our modern version, we are going to toss in just 1/4 ounce. And in our original, this is going to be equal parts between our rye whiskey and our Fernet, so we're going to toss in a full ounce. And finally, since this is Rye Month, star of the show is going to be our Rittenhouse Rye. So I'm going to do our old one first, and again that is going to be 1 ounce of rye whiskey. Feel free to use Canadian whiskey if you prefer. And in our modern, we're going to go with the more traditional 2 ounce pour. All right. Now, we just got to get some ice in our shaker and shake these things up. Okay, get some ice in our mixing glasses. a good stir. And then we're going to strain those into a couple of chilled coupe glasses. All right, so we are going to start off with our modern. In there. Then our original. These are my new coupe glasses. They're a little big for a lot of the drinks I make, so I might end up getting some new ones. One other thing that's sort of different about these, and it's actually not that surprising if you kind of look at the way the cocktail culture has changed a little bit. Our new version is going to take a orange twist. And our original is going to take a lemon twist. And this is totally unscientific, but it sort of runs along what I've seen. It kind of seems like things have been going more towards orange than lemon over time. A lot of the original recipes, and I said this when I was making the old fashioned, a lot of the original old fashioned recipes call for lemon, not an orange, which I actually think is superior, but entirely up to taste. So let's try our modern version first. And this one seems like kind of the most, the closest like a Manhattan basically, or an old fashioned. That's a cold weather cocktail. It's very hearty. The Fernet's doing a lot in there. The sweetness I don't think is overpowering. It maybe a quarter of an ounce of Demerara is a little bit too sweet. Maybe just go with the regular simple syrup. But it's got a nice spice to it. I think the orange works there pretty well. But it's definitely a cocktail that makes you think about sitting by a fire and you know, there's snow outside and whatnot. Let's try our original. There's a lot of Fernet there. There's no way of getting around that. I don't mind Fernet. It's not my favorite spirit. I'm not in love with it or anything, but I don't dislike it. The spice is a lot more. There's a lot more bitterness. Remember, this has Angostura, although very little Angostura, and Fernet, so there's a lot of bitterness going on there. I'd still say it's reasonably well balanced. Man, so this is really going to depend on how you take Fernet. If you like Fernet, I think you're going to like this cocktail. If you don't like Fernet, you're not going to like this cocktail. Because it's not, the Fernet is not getting lost in either one of these. Even on our one with only a quarter of an ounce, you're still getting a pretty fair amount of that kind of, I kind of described as kind of like a cola flavor, but more bitter. Like think about cola, but without very much sweetness. I think this is one of the rare things where I think the changes they've made to the cocktail are probably good. Yeah, I think that's just a better drink in general. The Fernet is in its place here. You're tasting it, and it's having an effect, and it's sort of nicely balanced, and it's not overpowering. Here, the Fernet is, again, if you like Fernet, you're probably going to be okay with this. If you don't like Fernet or you're unfamiliar with it, this is probably going to catch you off guard a little bit. Yeah, it is a lot of Fernet there. But I could drink this, but I think I'd rather have the modern version. So, on that bombshell, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good drink, and have a good day. I know.